you guys hear me?
Had to do. Good evening, everyone. It is 7 p.m. Time to call the Westfield, Washington Township Advisory Plan Commission meeting for Monday, October 2nd, 2023 to order. If staff will please call or note the presence of a quorum.
Ms. Berkman?
Here.
Mr. Deck? Mr. Horke?
Here.
Mr. Johns? Ms. Keller?
Here.
Mr. Maui?
Here.
Mr. McCarty? Mr. Schmitz?
Here.
And Ms. Spoljaric.
Here.
And I should make the note about Mr. McCarty.
Yes.
This evening.
It was here, but he can't respond as present because he has resigned.
Just to make note of that, yeah. Thank you. We
I
do
did
have a
not
quorum.
see your letter, though. I don't know if you sent it to me or not. All right. So if Mr. Larson is listening, apparently we may have an issue with the group email for APC stuff, because I didn't get it, nor did Dr. Kelleher. But we have a quorum regardless. There are no changes to the agenda, and item next would be the approval of our minutes of the September 18th, 2023 meeting. Is there a motion regarding those minutes to accept them into the record?
So moved.
We have a motion from Cindy Spoljaric, and do we have a second?
I'll second that.
Seconded by Andre Maui. If staff would, or actually, we're all here. We can do this with a voice vote. Is everybody in favor of accepting the minutes into the record? Say aye.
Aye.
Is there anybody opposed or abstaining? Minutes are accepted. If staff would please review the rules of procedures for tonight's meeting.
Yes, so the general rules of conduct for this evening, please do not disturb the proceedings in any way. If you need to have a private discussion, then we ask you to please quietly exit the room. Please silence your devices at this time. If you must answer them, then please quietly exit the room. If you're attending in person and wish to speak in regard to a petition scheduled for a public hearing, then please line up along the west wall once the public hearing is opened. Please sign the speaker sheet as you approach the podium to speak. For efficiency purposes, we ask those that are representing a group to speak first. During your comments, please state your name and address into the microphone for the record, and we ask that you please do not repeat previously stated comments. Your presentation will be timed and you will be advised when there's approximately 30 seconds remaining. If you are not attending in person, comments regarding a petition, they should be emailed to planners@westfield.in.gov with the petition name or number included in the subject line. Those comments will be forwarded to the Plan Commission members and the petitioner. We'd like to remind everyone to please speak directly into the microphone so your comments can be put on the record. Also, please mute your microphone if not speaking. If you come to the podium to speak, please ensure that the microphone is on as indicated by the green light on the base. And then additional procedures for public hearing items. For items requiring a public hearing, tonight's meeting has the following structure. The department will summarize the petition. Then the petitioner will be given up to 15 minutes to present the Plan Commission. The president will open a public hearing. As previously stated, individuals will be given 3 minutes to speak, and those representing a group will be given 5 minutes to speak. Only one member of the group will be given 5 minutes to speak. The public hearing will be closed when all interested members of the audience have had the chance to be heard and all emails received during the meeting have been provided to the Plan Commission members. The petitioner will then be given 10 minutes to respond to comments without interruption. The Commission will follow with any comments, questions, or concerns regarding the petition. This may include additional discussion with the petitioner. And that concludes our rules of procedures this evening. Thank you.
Thank you. We have 2 miscellaneous items to attend to tonight. The first being a Sycamore Glen commitment amendment. Staff would summarize that for us, and then we'll discuss.
Caleb Burness with the City of Westfield. Thank you, President, members of the Plan Commission. So the Sycamore Glen PUD had commitments that were recorded back in 2021. The specific commitment section that is recommended for an amendment resolution is section 1E1, which is in reference to adding any additional builders to Sycamore Glen that they have to receive a vote by the Plan Commission. So this request is simply asking that instead of just the one Coronado Homes builder, that there will be 2 builders in Sycamore Glen, the second builder being Wedgwood Homes. So that is the request here tonight. There is a representative available if you have any questions for them. And if you have any questions for me, I'm available. Thank you.
Very good, thank you. There's no further presentation from the Sycamore Glen or Wedgwood, whichever it is that has representatives here. We can go ahead and have comments or questions from Plan Commission for the petitioner or staff.
I just want to say that I think this is great. We talked about other builders in the beginning, and that's why we put this section in here. If there were some other custom builders that they wanted to bring in later, they would come before us. I think it's a great addition. It'll be a mixture of different home builders and types of homes, so I think it'll make the subdivision even better.
I too would see this as a positive. Wedgwood certainly presents a high caliber look, and variety is better than, more variety is better than less variety. So there's no further questions or comments. This is in front of us to consider approving this commitment. Is there a motion regarding this?
I would move to approve the commitment amendment resolution. I guess there's no number on it, for Sycamore Glen.
We
Is
have a
that
motion.
adequate?
Yeah, I didn't know how to better phrase it than that since there was no petition number. We're good with that, staff? Okay, we have a motion from Dr. Kelleher, seconded by Kristen Berkman to approve Wedgwood Builders to be a builder in Sycamore Glen. If staff could please call the roll.
Ms. Berkman,
Yes.
Mr. Horke,
Yes.
Ms. Keller,
Yes.
Mr. Maui,
Yes.
Mr. Schmitz,
Yes.
and Ms. Boljaric.
Yes.
Motion's approved.
Excellent. Certainly. Go out there and start building. Assuming you have a permit. The other miscellaneous item we have is something that does have a petition number, 2306-PUD-07. It's Claiborne Farms, also known as Kimblewick, Phase 2 PUD. They are on our agenda tonight for a motion to consider an extension of the project as they are bumping up against their 6 months. So we can have the presentation.
Good evening. Rex Ramage, Pulte Homes, 11590 North Meridian Street. The request before you this evening is an extension to come before the full Plan Commission for a vote, or for a vote in favor, I guess not in favor, but let me re-say that. The request before you tonight is an extension request for you to then make a recommendation at a later date. Per the Plan Commission rules and procedures, that would need to occur before December. If you all recall, at the last workshop committee meeting, there were some items that we wanted to work through with both the neighbors to the north. There were 2 homeowners to the north, and then also the internal Del Webb residents. Those items being the shared property lines with respect to the trees and the landscaping buffers, and then specific to the north, there was some drainage-related issues along that shared property line with some low-lying areas. We wanted to make sure that we could work those issues out completely before we came back before you requesting a recommendation to the council. So I believe we could reasonably be back in front of the Plan Commission probably by the February meeting. I think that's the target. Things kind of go a little haywire between Thanksgiving and the beginning of the year. So if we would be able to seek a vote this evening to come back before you no later than February, that would be terrific.
Okay. We can do this evening, correct, staff? This is not something that is a presentation to be acted on later. We can go ahead and discuss it tonight and make a determination. We're not talking about any wholesale changes to the development. It's just a matter of I-dotting, T-crossing. We're not going to see something entirely different when it comes back.
Correct.
So,
Yes, sir.
okay.
Staff, I guess. With the approval of the extension, do we need to put any kind of time limit on it, or do we just approve it?
I mean, you can, we haven't done that before.
Okay. I don't necessarily want to, I just wondered if that was required.
Yeah, I don't think so.
Would it not be such that if it took beyond February to the point where there's another 6-month interval, it would require another visit?
Yeah,
to receive yet another
If you want to make
extension?
that clarification, maybe revisit every 6 months if needed.
I
That's
was
probably
thinking
fair.
that's the way our ordinance worked, that
That's
you
kinda
get
what I thought.
that much time after the public hearing, then we give them additional time, but it wouldn't be in excess of what they've already had.
Yeah, I don't have a memory. We can look and see, but it wouldn't hurt to add that, revisit every 6 months, or however you want to word it.
Right, not that they're going to take 2 years to come back.
No.
Your
So
expectation
is
is February,
6-month
you said.
extension adequate?
Yes. So
Said
based on how
October,
the dates
November,
fall,
December,
if we would like to
That'd give you
say that
till
it's no later
April.
than no later than the March hearing, I think that would probably fall within the 6 months from today. So if that's acceptable to you all, that would be acceptable to us. We would appreciate that.
Okay, it's not a problem. Any other questions or comments from the commission? Is there a motion to grant the 6-month extension to the March or April meetings?
I make a motion to approve the extension request for 2310 PUD 09 Claiborne Farms Phase 2 PUD.
We have a motion from Andre Maui. Do we have a second?
Second?
Seconded by Dr. Kelleher. Staff would please call the roll.
Mr. Horke,
Yes.
Ms. Keller,
Yes.
Mr. Maui,
Yes.
Mr. Schmitz,
Yes.
Ms. Spoljarek,
Yes.
and Ms. Berkman.
Yes.
Motion's approved.
Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. That completes our miscellaneous business. There is no consent agenda this evening, nor any items of regular business, taking us then to the start of 5 public hearings, the first of which is Spring Mill Center PUD Amendment 1, petition number 2310-PUD-09. And I'll repeat right now, and this will apply to all of them, just as a reminder, anybody that is attending virtually that has comments, please be certain to send an email to planners@westfield.in.gov, referencing in the subject line which of the 5 public hearing items you might be wanting to comment on. Assuming that there are actual in-person comments, I'll close the public hearing right after the actual live comments, because there will have been adequate time to have gotten any comments to us. In the event that there is a petition that doesn't have public comment, we'll hold it just a little bit, but try to keep the meeting moving and not just have 2 minutes of dead time here. So if staff will go ahead and summarize this first public hearing.
Yes, good evening, members of the commission. For the record, Weston Rogers with the Community Development Department. The item being presented before you this evening is a proposed amendment to the Spring Mill Center PUD district that's located generally northeast of the intersection of State Road 32 and Spring Mill Road. So this proposed PUD amendment proposes to modify the signage standards associated with the property. This item before you this evening is up for a public hearing. It was introduced at the September 11th City Council meeting, and this item was properly noticed and advertised. A virtual neighborhood meeting was also held on September 27th. To date, staff has received no public comments. The petitioner is here this evening to provide a brief overview of the request. Both the petitioner and staff are available to answer any questions you may have. Thank you.
Thank you. Petitioner presentation, please.
Good evening. For the record, Russell Brown with the Clark Quinn Law Firm, 320 North Meridian Street, Suite 1100 in Indianapolis. Also with me tonight is Randy Zentz on behalf of the developer. The request before you tonight, as mentioned, is a request modification to the sign program for the Spring Mill Center PUD. When the original Spring Mill Center PUD was adopted, it was uncertain of what development patterns might look like for the PUD and how signage needs might or might not match up with the UDO. As development has proceeded and individual users have begun acquisition and development, it was determined that an overall uniform sign package should be developed as a modification to the PUD instead of having those individual developments come through for a variance for their specific needs. To date, the three outlots that are furthest to the west have all been closed upon, and there is construction activity on the further easternmost lot. And you all approved on your consent agenda the far western lot last month for a new Wawa gas station. So there is development activity. It's moving forward very well on the outlots. But we got the consent of those who have bought property as well as the original developer to bring this petition before you this evening. The proposed modification attempts to address both what is known at Spring Mill Center while still reserving opportunities for the portion of the PUD which have an unknown future as we sit here this evening. We have proposed an amendment which allows for up to 5 outlot signs along State Road 32. Those signs would be no greater in size than 60 square feet and would allow for each outlot to have an identification sign. We have also proposed up to 3 larger monument signs or center only on the site. These signs would be a larger sign for providing information about a multitude of users in Spring Mill Center. As proposed, we have shown 1 center-only sign on 32 and 2 on Spring Mill Road. We believe the extended distance on Spring Mill Road, which is approximately 2,000 feet in depth off of State Road 32, along with the large cutout there on the northern end for the telecommunication towers, warrants two signs along Spring Mill Road. The proposed signs before you tonight were sized based on other allowable sign height and square footage, which may generally be allowed under the UDO. Permitted sign heights of this type under the UDO range from 9 feet in height to as tall as 25 feet in height. We have proposed a max height of approximately 17 feet. The sizes range from 60 square feet per face to 250 square feet per face. And we've proposed here approximately 110 square feet of available area. Those are done on a kind of a sliding scale based on square footage of the overall development within a district. Here, we don't know the overall development yet of what the square footage will be, given that you have the northern part of the development, which is not developed at this point and doesn't have any defined end users available. So in addition to reviewing what the UDO provides, the development team, with the guidance of staff, reviewed several nearby PUDs to determine signage allowances in those comparable developments. It's our belief as applicant that the proposal before you strikes a healthy balance based on end user need, physical size, and separation available within the PUD, and we believe meets the surrounding context of developments. In reviewing nearby developments, PUDs, there are some slightly smaller overall outlot and center signs, but those developments reserve a corner sign or signs which mark the overall development, which we are not asking for here. There are nearby PUDs which have a similar overall size for some signs, but larger from others. The Meyer development has 5 total signs for approximately 2,200 linear feet of frontage. The applicant here is requesting 8 total signs for approximately 3,100 linear feet along Spring Mill and 32. There are other PUDs to the west which reserve the right to have multiple 25-foot center signs as you move west towards Casey and Ditch Roads. It is the applicant's belief that what's requested in this amendment is reasonable from a design aesthetic, but also from the needs perspective for those confirmed and potential future occupants at Spring Mill Center. We believe that the proposal is contextually appropriate for the surrounding uses and should eliminate future projects within Spring Mill Center from continuing to request further modifications to the PUD or relief therefrom for purposes of signs only, which was our goal in putting this together. Both Mr. Zentz and I are here, happy to answer any questions. Otherwise, we look forward to working with you through the process to hopefully gain your favorable recommendation at a later date.
Thank you. We will go ahead and open a public hearing. at 7:20 PM. Do we have any known comments?
Yeah, we have nobody
How's
that,
tonight?
nobody's signed up yet. We don't have any emails at this time, but we can give it a minute or two.
All right. Is there anybody in the room that did not sign up that, having heard what they've just heard, cares to make any comments? All right. Quick reminder, and we'll go ahead and have a little dead air time here. If there is a virtual attendee that has an interest in making a comment, please type very quickly an email to planners@westfield.in.gov. Include the Spring Mill Center PUD name in the subject line. And we'll hold till 7:22 before closing the public hearing to see if there's a email that comes in. If you can't type the whole thing, at least let us know you have an interest in sending one. It was pretty close to 7:22, so I loitered a little bit. If we don't have any emails, I'll go ahead and close the public hearing.
No further emails.
Yep, okay. Public hearing is closed at 7:22. Commissioner comments, questions for staff or the petitioner?
I'll say something.
Please.
On its face, you know, a signage request seems like a fairly small thing, but it turns out to be a fairly big thing when you think about the aesthetics of it in the community. And for me, it's always been a question of equity and allowing, you know, one project to have a whole lot more versus another project, especially in close proximity. That's not something that I feel comfortable with doing. I think it gives an unfair advantage to one. I do worry about adding this much signage. There's still all the wall signage availability, wall awning, and what's the other one? I can't remember the face of it. But
Directional signs that will probably have some branding on them as well.
yes, and different drive-throughs, and, you know, we'll have the canopy
Menus,
for
potentially.
the gas and different things like that. So there is already quite a bit of signage going on. And we are trying to make our State Road 32 area something to really be special. So it is a concern of mine. I don't know that it's enough for me to say no, and I need to look at this a little bit further to look at the surrounding developments and see how this compares. That's kind of an important thing to me, and luckily in the staff report, you did point out links to go to that, and I just haven't assessed it yet.
Yes, so just to add to that, we provided those links to provide some contextual understanding to the area. This ordinance was modeled after Dartown Crossing, just east of this property. So there is some inspiration drawn from that. However, you know, we understand your comment regarding the context across the street, but understanding that this development, you know, this isn't an effort to, you know, potentially prevent any further BZA filings or anything of that nature. So, you know, thank you for your comment, and yeah, I encourage you to look at the neighboring properties. And there's also a quick reference guide in the staff report as well, which outlines really what exactly this request is for and what it is not for. So
Under the
Feel
UDO,
free to-
it'd be one center sign, and then they're requesting 3, and they wouldn't have the ability to do any individual monument signs, from what I understand, and they're asking for 5.
that's correct.
Okay.
You're welcome.
I'll jump in. I agree with Cindy about equity, and making our State Road 32 corridor attractive. I drove up and down the area today a couple of times, and there are very few signs actually close to the road. A lot of them are simply big signs on the buildings or the businesses themselves. Meyer, Ortho Indy, a lot of the others. And I'm assuming that these businesses will also have signs on the walls facing 32. That would be allowed, right?
Correct. Those standards would not be modified in
Right.
any way.
So when I looked at those, there were not a lot of signs along 32 in the existing businesses. I can understand the reason for the monument signs on Spring Mill Road. You have two entrances that go back into businesses. They don't front, at least probably will not, a lot of them will not front Spring Mill Road. So those seem very reasonable. Along the front, I have concerns. It appears cluttered, and I'm not a business person. When I say unnecessary, I don't say that from a business perspective, Mr. Zent, but as I drive along 32 and I see all the businesses there with their wall signs, that's what attracts me. There are some monument signs, I think, right at the corner of Panda Express and whatever is next to it. And
KFC.
yeah, and it's down so low you don't even see it. I mean, what hits me is the big wall signs on the businesses. That's what, what I see. So I have the same reservations as Cindy has for the amount that is being asked for.
Question for staff. Thank you for putting these reference documents. I'm struggling a little bit, though, to apples with those. Is it possible to add a couple more columns on this table? Because I really appreciate the work that went into this table. It's excellent, so that we can understand what's happened at Dartown and Maple Knoll. Is that something that's possible, just to get it all in one picture for us? And I think it could be a nice reference tool even moving forward, as this is going to continue to come up along 32 on our lots that are open.
Yeah, it's something we can look at. One thing that we'd like to mention too, that, as Jenny mentioned, there is a lot of variety along 32, and comparing apples to apples can be difficult just because of the nature of each one of these retail centers is they're all a little different. And, to establish some identity for each retail center is also a consideration to maybe think about. So we can look at doing that, but, we don't want to be unfair to grade other developments as a staff and assign, what each one has against what another one does. Because at the end, they're all different, but we can look into clarifying what other properties have done in the past.
But I think that there can be some consistency on how many feet apart these monument signs are, regardless. I mean, we have the developers who have of course, their businesses that they're promoting. Our job is to make sure our city looks nice along that corridor. So having some type of consistency along how many feet apart these monument signs are, it's obviously not something that's in the overlay right now because they're in tonight, and it just might be nice to, I understand it's not exactly apples to apples, but having some type of overall holistic picture that we can kind of think about along that corridor would be helpful. So thank you for anything you can do.
What I did this evening was to drive up and down 32 a couple of times, and I did not notice a whole lot of signs, out front, the individual signs. Most of them were on the buildings. There were a few monument signs, but my general impression, and they may not be complete yet, was that we didn't have a whole lot of little signs. We had signs on the building and then maybe a monument sign. And to me, everything was very visible and,
When you say monument, you're
I guess.
actually meaning center sign?
Yeah, a center
Based on
sign,
the
right.
terminology in here.
yeah, I guess that's,
Right.
I'm not a sign person, so.
Yeah, and
excuse me
just
if
to
I don't-
I just want to make sure we're talking about the
Something
same,
that would
same sort of thing.
advertise several businesses in.
Yeah.
And that's why I think on 32, that's certainly appropriate, because most of those are going to be probably internal. Is that, we don't know that for sure yet, but probably will be internal.
Another thing I would just like to add here too is, in really any individual outlot monument sign you see along 32 has either proceeded through this commission or through BZA in one capacity or the other. So this is a unique opportunity to have a cohesive approach to signage along, thousands of linear feet of road frontage. So that is something to just consider with this proposal, that it would provide some cohesion to the area,
Right.
which would support a lot of the comments here of, having less clutter or less mix match, if you will.
Yeah.
So just
And
consider that as
To
you
me, it
proceed
looked,
through.
I didn't see clutter. It was, as I drove along, I kept trying to find a sign close to the road, and most of them were back as a center sign with numerous ones, or the side of the building had very attractive signage on it, so, but,
I was going to make two comments. One is to Weston's comment. That's why we're here, is to try to create a cohesive view, because as we've started to have outlot activity, we've started, well, we're going to go ask for a sign. Well, the instant one person does, before the BZA, if they get relief from the BZA, well, the next person then comes in and suddenly you don't have any cohesion in it. And so we're trying to create cohesion. Second is, I would also encourage, as an apples to apples, is this development is laid out significantly different than the Meyer development across the street, and that you have two public rights of way that one public right of way that bisects the development overall, which is a requirement of your development patterns. So you have Tournament Trail to the north there. So maybe a little bit closer, as you get a little closer to 31, that may be more of the apples to apples. I think there are more ground signs, low ground signs there for Culvers and Portillo's and some of those. Those have all been on a case-by-case basis, not done in a cohesive way. I did try to provide you some context when you try linear feet. I think is a helpful way to talk about how many linear feet is a development, how many signs are you allowed for that linear development. I think there's a lot of that are permitted but not yet constructed, that are authorized and not yet constructed. So that's also the other thing that's helpful to go through. And I would just encourage that Spring Mill, I believe it's Spring Mill Trails to the west, has a large development, but has a significant amount of frontage along State Road 32, and has a very large signs that are permitted by right under that PUD. So I think, again, maybe not constructed yet, but there are a lot that are permitted, and so we're just trying to make sure that we have a level playing field as we're going out. I think the quality of development here is attracting, obviously. It's not very often that you see fuel centers get state incentives, and the governor talking about new fuel centers coming into a community, but Wawa got that last week. So I think there is a pretty high level of attractiveness for the types of development that's occurring at this location, and we just want to make sure that those regional and national developers are given that opportunity.
are these signs intended to be lit? I'm assuming they are, and if so, how?
They would be internally lit. Yeah, internally lit.
Internal?
Yes, correct.
Okay.
And we can, I think we're open to have conversations about some of the things you've talked about, and hope to do that through the workshop process, about spacing, about size. I think about size as you move along Spring Mill. The two along Spring Mill are very, very important, because you do have a bifurcated entry likely to the property, and I think that's going to be very important as that development opportunity comes along. And then how do we create a cohesive presence along State Road 32 for those folks who have already made an investment in your community by buying the property already?
Yeah, I think the ones on 32 are necessary. I mean, on Spring Mill are necessary. On 32, it's very confusing because everything is so different, and I don't mean to make more work for staff, but you have a very visual thing here where I have I have these signs. Is there any way we could just do a sketch of 32 and show something like that? It doesn't have to be fancy.
We could look into that.
I mean, I tried to do that when I drove along there today. Yeah,
Existing or
that would help.
permitted.
you know.
Currently
Because
permitted.
when I drove along there, my impression was that there were not a lot. But I may be wrong. It may be that I've missed some, or as I get closer to 31, there are more. And I think visually, for me, that would really be helpful.
Yeah,
And
we can
maybe
work with the
even what's
petitioner to
approved
put that
to the
together.
west. Just, we don't know the location of some of these, but we do know what's allowed, and that would be helpful.
Right, if that effort is going to proceed, it would be probably beneficial to know specifically, here's something that is installed, it's there today. If you can't find it, it is there, go look for it. But where there's vacant ground and there could be additional signs, we should know where those are going to go as well.
Just an X or
So we need to kind of have two types
Then
of things demarked on there for existing and allowable, whether or not it gets used in the future, TBD.
Right, and that's what I think Cindy and I are talking about, equity. I don't want to dismiss you if we've got a whole lot to the west that are going to allow this, but the ones that I saw today did not appear to have that many, so rather than just my gut feeling, it would be nice to have an X where we're going to have one of these.
Yeah, we can certainly look into doing that. We can coordinate with the petitioner on putting together something like that. That might address your comment too, as well.
Yeah, and I would jump on that too. I was gonna have to piece all that together. I'd appreciate that as well, trying to figure that out.
Okay.
I appreciate the
David?
petitioner's efforts to take a comprehensive approach to this. It's going to be very helpful going down the line and not have to piecemeal all these outlaws. And did you reference the workshop process? Would this be on a workshop agenda then to?
Yes, the petitioner is planning on going to a
Right,
workshop.
so that'll be a good opportunity to, I hadn't spent enough time to compare and contrast them, so that'll be perfect.
The reference was that this is something that was modeled after the Dartown Road Center to the east, also on the north side of 32. I would kind of submit, I think that if it was modeled after what's to the south across the street where Meyer is, that it would look a little different because the center signs, make sure I'm using the correct, center signs, there are lower than what is depicted here, I believe. And the way that discussion evolved and was ultimately approved was allowing more monument signs as a consideration from Westfield for the consideration back from the development team to have fewer and smaller center signs. And the ones on Spring Mill Road in particular are substantially smaller. And I would also have a concern about the two that are proposed here on Spring Mill Road, because the lots that are further north, we're not sure how those are going to develop, and they could be something other than the same kind of small lot retail that is on 32. To use kind of the worst case example, I wouldn't see the Teachers Credit Union, who is that small, most easterly lot, warrants a sign that far north on Spring Mill Road. So to say that you can have a center sign for all of the occupants of this entire PUD in all those locations, I think is excessive signing. And that we as a community need to kind of be fair in what we do, but also have reasonable expectations that not everybody gets everything. And Spring Mill Trails was approved like in the dark ages compared to now. I'm not sure what we specifically did, because that's been so many, almost literally decades ago. I would not be open to trying to use that as a basis of comparison, because I don't think that's an apples to apples at all, that was something that I don't really believe got the same kind of thought process to it that we put into things today, where I think we are being smarter and reasonable, whereas that, I think, kind of defaulted to normal, whatever it is that we had in it. If it was coming through today, it would not be what it is now.
Right.
And when signs specifically come in for approval, there may be requests for more monument signs, at which point in time we will then have the opportunity to say, sure, but, and then get the dialogue going on center signs compared to monument signs and their sizes relative to each other and the number, the number of each of them. So I think, we've got to start here. I think the staff effort in conjunction with the petitioner to better clarify, here's what we really have. And while this is a large PUD, what's across the street is a fairly large PUD, the Dartown Road property is fairly large. There's only one user there right now. Other things along 32 are also PUDs, albeit much smaller, to the Ginnies and the Bobs that are drive up and down 32. If we don't think about, I remember when we approved that PUD, and it has a lot of property, everybody just sees one tenant after another tenant after another tenant. So the consistency among PUDs, I would say, is really less important than probably the consistency at each individual parcel that somebody has bought or leased and then built on and tries to be successful in their business, which we want them to be. Otherwise, they're not helping anybody. So we have a lot of things to look at and consider. Unless there's somebody else that has something they really feel like they need to bring up. Unless you have something else, I think we've probably exhausted our dialogue for tonight. Yes? Okay. So we'll see you at a workshop meeting, maybe, yeah, probably not in 2 weeks, but in November at the earliest, probably. So thank you. Moving on, next public hearing is Custom Commerce Park PUD Amendment 5, petition 2310-PUD-10. Staff can summarize, and then we'll open a public hearing for this.
Filling in for Dane tonight. Good evening, members of the APC. For the record, Ryan Collingwood with the Community Development Department. The item presented before you this evening is a proposed amendment to the Custom Commerce Park PUD District, specifically Lot 6 within the district. This amendment proposes to accommodate a specialty auto service and sales use on Lot 6, the last remaining lot within the district. This petition was introduced at the first September council meeting and is slated for a public hearing at tonight's APC meeting. The item has been properly noticed and advertised, and staff has received no comments related to the petition. The petitioner is here this evening to provide a brief presentation, and both the petitioner and staff are available to answer any questions you may have. Thank you.
Thank you. Before the petitioner begins, I'll do my reminder about virtual attendees, if there is anyone. Please, if you're commenting on this Custom Commerce Park PUD amendment, start typing to planners@westfield.in.gov, so at the conclusion of any comments that are made here in City Hall, that we'll be able to consider those or close the public hearing. Mr. Skelton.
Thank you. Thank you, members of the Plan Commission. For the record, I'm Matt Skelton with Churchill and Antrim, with offices at 116 North Union Street here in town. With me this evening in the back of the room is Eugene Gorin, owner of Indy Automan. The petition before you is really submitted to address a PUD that was approved in 2003, actually, originally, and has since developed fully except for this last remaining lot. The proposed land use is a higher-end automotive refurbishing and service and sales use. As Ryan pointed out, the auto repair garages and collision care type of uses are permitted on the property by right today. That, however, is not the model of this petitioner. They just do light service work on vehicles and some customization and sales. So really the purpose of this is to permit the sales transactional aspect of the use. This is not a traditional auto sales type of use. This was discussed at the city council meeting, but nearly all of the business that is generated in the way of sales on the property is generated online, and generally speaking, clients will visit the property by appointment only. This is not exclusively true, but it's for the most part, it's in the 90% somewhere. This use is less intensive than some other permitted uses that are allowed today, such as different manufacturing and assembly type of operations. The proposed building will be constructed of the same high architectural materials that the rest of the park has been constructed of. The current owner of the property, our seller, the Carr family has had this property for many, many years. They're present here this evening. They've made clear their expectations for the architecture and the quality of the building. We understand it, and are not proposing to alter the applicable requirements in any way. We have met one-on-one with our nearby neighbors, Thieneman, Weiss Engineering, and Automatic Pool Covers, should be familiar names to you. And they have no issues with this proposal and have stated as such. We've hosted a neighbor meeting for a general neighbor meeting last week, and the only people that were in attendance were us, so nobody came. Indy Auto's current business operates, just as informational, operates with a 4.9 out of 5-star customer satisfaction rating with over 4,300 reviews on Google, if that means anything to anybody. And they're very proud of the reputation that they've developed over the years, not only with customers, but also in the community. If approved, they plan to begin construction in 2024. And we thank you for your consideration. We'd be happy to respond to any questions either now or after the hearing.
Very good, thank you. We will move on, as we typically do, to the public hearing first, and that will be open at 7:46 p.m. Do we have any sign-ups for this public hearing?
No one has signed up.
We do not. Okay, and I've made the email announcement. Is there anybody that has corresponded by email?
No emails at this time.
All right, so we open the public hearing at, I said 7:46, and I will therefore close it at 7:47. That was a public quiet as opposed to a public hearing. Commissioners, questions, comments for staff or the petitioner?
Couple things. You're asking, just to make sure I'm clear, Matt, you're asking for no parking, internal parking lot landscaping, which I get. This isn't a public parking lot, it's for vehicles, and that seems fine to me. You're asking for a different use, which seems less intense, which also seems fine with me. The only concern I have is you have buffering along your Monon buffering, and yet if you're coming north on the Monon, that little section that goes kind of from the northeast to the southwest, I think needs to be included in that.
Northeast, okay. This,
that little section there, because you can see that from the Monon.
okay. I can talk with our landscape team and make sure that there's nothing that would prohibit that.
Right, right, because you're going to be able to see that from the Monon. Maybe
Sure.
it's a distance, but the other question that I had, and maybe you can answer that, is there a difference in elevation from the Monon to this site? It appeared so in your drawings, but that doesn't mean that's accurate.
So the short answer is I don't know,
Okay.
but I've been out to the site and this is fairly flat and it runs, everything ends up, everything would have to be captured and then treated and then released into detention pond.
Okay, and I know years ago when we did the Goodwill store there on 31, there was concern that we don't drain oil and things from cars that are parked there into a pond that then...
That's true of every parking lot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I don't know if that's something that
Yeah.
consider. It's obviously not a part that we're going to approve or disapprove, but it's something to consider. That.
So under modern drainage laws, not only are you required to collect and release at a acceptable rate to slow the flash events and the event of flooding and things, but you also have to gather it, treat it, and then release. So you have a facility that drains into a facility.
Okay, good.
So it's kind of baked into the system. It's not, it's done on every project.
Okay, know that, learn something new, thank you.
Yeah.
I think those were my biggies. When I looked at the, from the Monon to the tree line on the diagram that you had, and I don't remember which picture that was, it looked like it might have been higher, but that it looked like the landscaping was going to screen it adequately, and that's my only concern, is that we screen the mown on.
And I couldn't tell you exactly, but I don't think it's, I mean, it's Hamilton County, it's not,
It's flat.
it's pretty flat.
Okay. That's all I have.
The first comment I was going to make, I wasn't as quick on the mic, was that missing piece of buffer, so I agree with that. Thank you for bringing that up.
Thank you.
And as I started reading this, I thought, well, how are we going to define this close enough to where it doesn't grow into other uses? But I think that's actually defined well to my satisfaction in terms of, like you said, 85% by appointment, and you defined what work is and is not done there. So I was happy with that. Question about what's proposed as far as fencing, security of the area and stuff.
And they don't fence, they have pretty highly, I don't know, I'll show what I don't know, but they have all kinds of infrared cameras, and it's pretty high technology. They're used to doing this.
I don't have anything else, thanks.
And they specifically like locations that are not high-profile locations. This is not a place where you go kick tires after hours. It's not that kind of a facility.
It's not visible. People aren't going to drive by
Right.
and pull in. They're going to have to know it's there and have an appointment, so.
David, Cindy?
I'm comfortable with the suggestions that have been made. The landscaping around that corner, I think, would be helpful. And the comments about it being internalized and not as visible helps as well, so I'm fine.
Cindy?
I would like to better understand the height of the trees that will be going in, because right now, I guess it's just the UDO standard, especially with the evergreens, and sometimes we get very little specimens, and I'd like to understand how that's going to work out. And also, I'd just like to really understand what our standard would be in terms of all of the landscaping and where this lies within that.
I'm not understanding your question on that, sorry.
Like with the PUD as it's written, what would be required for landscaping in general on this site? Because usually we get a table, we don't have that table.
Oh,
So,
well,
in
it's
the
because
staff report.
we're not asking to change anything, that's why.
Well, you're exempting yourself, though, from a lot of the landscaping requirements, it seems.
Correct.
Right.
Yeah, so there's only a few departures, and it's just for the interior area that basically all of the perimeter parking lot landscaping, foundation planting, all of those standards are still applicable.
Oh, that's not how it reads to me.
I think all they're exempting themselves from is the parking lot landscaping and the landscaping along the north property line.
pipeline, yeah.
Along the pipeline.
Along
Other
the
than
pi-
that, they'll have to follow the UDO. Is
Correct.
that correct?
That's the intention. That should be how it's written.
Right. But I think Cindy has a good question, which I had missed. You have evergreen trees and shade trees and 2 species, and how many per 100 lineal feet, but not a size. It would be nice.
And it is, so the requirement, it's actually stated in the PUD even.
Okay. Just want to make sure we don't miss
That's
something.
okay. Yeah, on the last, well, I guess it's the third page, last page, the text of the ordinance, it's 10 evergreen trees per 100 lineal feet.
Right.
And those are 6 foot at the time of installation. And
Okay,
then,
that's what it doesn't say.
and, well, that's, your ordinance requires it.
Okay, so you're following.
Oh, yeah,
there.
yep.
So- Okay, I just want to make sure that's.
Yeah, and the
understood.
shade trees have to be, they're 8 feet at the time of installation.
I wasn't sure if the custom commerce PUD, though, in its entirety allows something else. That's what I didn't know.
Okay.
I think it defaults, yeah, I can look at it real quick, I got it with me.
Yeah, that's a good point, Cindy.
Well,
Because since
yeah.
it's a PUD that you may have changed our UDO.
No, I think it defaults to the zoning ordinance with some specific changes along Oak Ridge Road, and this is not along Oak Ridge Road. I can provide more information to you if you want before.
I think it defaults to the old zoning ordinance, correct, before the UDO?
Well, it does not say that. This says, attached hereto and incorporated herein by reference as Exhibit 4 are landscaping standards set forth in Section 1606 of the zoning ordinance.
Because it was done in 2003.
Yeah, well, that's not our intention. I mean, we know the
Right.
I
current-
know. I
we
just
know
want to
the
see that
current
it's clear
standards.
as we,
Yeah, I don't think they did either. I know we spent time on that.
Yeah, I don't think they've changed from that version to current UDO, but we can double check
Yeah,
and
if
make
we
sure
could
that they're the
either
same.
do that or put it in here.
Yeah.
well, and that's
Because-
the problem, because we just want to make sure that, we understand, because these things wouldn't default, the rest of it, of the project, for this wouldn't default to this PUD necessarily, it would go back to the original, so.
Yeah.
Not understanding what was in that one completely, because it tied in the original zoning ordinance.
Yeah, do you remember when the landscaping section was page 204, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J, K, L? That's what
Yeah.
it is.
So if we can just find out which
So,
one this
yeah.
references and how big those have to be.
And that is in fact true. I mean, I've confirmed that. It's 8 feet, the shade trees are 8 feet at the time of installation, and the evergreens are 6 feet at the time of it.
Usually shade trees goes by caliper.
Well, I'm just going by what this says.
And we don't have to hash through it
Okay.
tonight. If we can just make sure we know what
Sure.
it is, so we don't get down the road and say, oh, we didn't expect that. I think we're all wanting to do the right thing. It's
Well,
just that-
we're not intending to depart from what would normally be required.
No, I know. But it will help future planners know what it says, rather than having to go back like we are now and try to figure it out.
What we're primarily needing to address here is the addition of this use in the Custom Commerce Park PUD
Or on this parcel,
on this parcel.
yes.
And so what you describe is something that is largely a non-conventional kind of a auto use where it's appointment, it's specialized
I think
sales.
it's becoming more conventional.
Well, maybe it is. But we've all seen car lots. My concern is, how do we make sure, if we approve that kind of use, that that's the kind of use that it has to be, and that if, for whatever reason, and the auto man finds a different site and they decide they like it better, we now have auto sales approved here, and it could be any kind of auto sales. Also, the site layouts that show the lot where all of the for sale vehicles would be available shows interior inventory parking, but then there's a lot of parking around the perimeter. Is all of the parking around the perimeter strictly for employees and customers? That's a lot of parking.
It is, but not exclusively necessarily. I mean, we are not suggesting that we would depart from the landscaping standards or the parking space size requirements or anything like that on any of those areas. So it'll be just a conventional, normal parking scenario. And so from the outside, it would look like any other parking lot.
And if that's the case, that's very helpful. My concern is that if there's, for whatever inexplicable reason, an excess inventory, do we start parking on every square foot of the surface regardless of where the lines are? Do we just start packing cars in? There's examples how that actually happens in the community. And just to the north of the trail, we have the Spring Mill, or what is it called again? The Trails of Westfield PUD, which, if I remember correctly, will have 5-story apartments. So there will be people 5 stories up looking to the south to be able to see this from a bird's eye view. How do we make sure that what they're looking at, I mean, they're looking at an industrial park regardless, but the users that are there right now, I mean, Custom Concrete's got quite a bit that shows on the aerials that's less than organized, but that's a long ways away and it's hidden by the building, and you have to really go looking for it to find it. This is going to be a lot more visible, not just from potentially trail users, and on the assumption the rendering that's showing what that landscaping will look like is accurate, then I'm okay with that. But I'd like to make sure that we're really narrowing the description so that the type of use that's being requested is the only type of use that we can have here, and that it'll be managed in a manner that somebody 5 stories up that's looking to enjoy their view out of their window doesn't see, you know, a crush of cars there.
So the traditional, like the Tom Wood Toyota type of use that you're afraid of is not a permitted use in this proposal. That's not what's being proposed. I mean, the use is restricted in the ordinance.
Right, and I'll have to look at that language
Okay.
more closely, but I just want to make sure the language is
Yeah.
narrow and tight enough.
If there's
that-
something you think we should add, we can consider it, but I think we've done it. I mean, the staff seems satisfied.
Okay.
And then I think I might have lost, what the cars might look like from above. Just know that the cars on this property will probably look better than most of the other parking lots they'll be looking at.
Could well be. But like I say, just in the event that there's spaces for 350 cars and at some point in time they have 425, where do those other 75 go? Do they just start putting them side by side by side by side, bumper to bumper to bumper, which then starts to look like, is this a junkyard? Is it really auto sales and detailing and whatever it is that they have in their use? I just want to make sure that we're looking at something that's going to be managed in a manner that looks like what this site plan is going to show us it to be.
Well, the city has, you know, parking requirements that, you know, that we're gonna have to comply with. And as far as like drive aisles and public safety and all the things that you'd be worried about, I mean, those are enforcement issues. If we're doing something that's not, you know, the way it should be, then that message should be delivered. I mean, I don't anticipate that. Part of the reason for selecting this site is because it's big enough to accommodate the use.
Okay.
Matt, just to clarify, the permitted uses on this site now are going away, and this will be the only permitted use? Is that what you're saying, or you're adding this as a use?
Yeah, we're just adding this as a permitted use. Or that's what the ordinance purports to do.
Right, okay.
Yeah.
For this site
Right,
only.
for this site only, right.
Okay. Any other questions, comments? So we've held the public hearing, we've had our comments. We'll see you back at a future meeting with whatever it is that we need to see different.
Have a workshop?
Will we
Do we
be-
have to waive a workshop
Yeah, I mean,
if we want to?
by default, it goes to workshop. If you would like to waive that requirement, you can.
I guess I would ask Matt that.
And I would, I don't know what to say. We're not looking for excuses to go to extra meetings, but if, it doesn't sound like it sounds like I'm going to further explain the landscaping just so everybody, so we know what what standards apply. And then, and talking about adding some landscaping in this area that would provide that extended buffer. And if there's, I don't know that I'm.
Those are my things. I don't know about anybody else.
So if you feel like it would be helpful to be at a workshop, we can do that, but I think we can make those changes between now and your next meeting.
There's not a mountain of things that need to be addressed, but it's certainly not something we're ready to do tonight. So I can voice my own opinion that I'd be fine with whatever type of meeting you would choose to come to next. If it's waiting till the first November meeting, if you're ready at that point in time to review things here and then get a recommendation, that's fine if you wanted to.
And
do
to
a-
further clarify, I would expect the same buffer that's there just to continue around. I mean, I don't think we need to reinvent it as
Just
to what's there.
Right here,
Yeah,
got it.
just what you've got around the corner.
I will speak to them and find out why that wasn't already done, and if there's a reason, then we can discuss it.
Okay.
So I guess in summary, since it sounds like we may not be having a workshop, the issues that need to be further answered before coming back are really exploring extending that buffer right there where the arrow is, confirming plant size and installation, right? I think that was still a question. Help me out, what else?
And confirming what size trees
Yeah.
which UDO
Right,
or
yeah,
zoning
that-
ordinance applies.
That's saying, right, confirming which standard applies and what those are.
That's all I.
That's it? Yep. So if those modifications are made or answers are, those questions are answered before another formal meeting, plan commission meeting, then I guess what I'm hearing is you're okay with them coming back, providing that information at a recommendation meeting.
Yes.
Okay.
If they want to come back to a workshop, that's fine. I'm just,
Kevin, I thought there was some clarification on around the building, the landscaping as well. That's okay, right, Cindy? I mean, we were talking about all these different, the UDO and the old PUD, and I think there's some confusion on what would be required.
I think if the staff report was
The
just a
front.
bit more clear in that, when they look and do their assessment, I think it would be enough to help us out.
Okay,
And
Just so
I
that's
believe
clear.
the same building, foundation planting requirement has not changed, I don't think. But we
Okay.
can clarify that too.
Since the default is that a workshop would follow, do we need to formalize it? Is the petitioner's option to come or not, and we're okay with either option?
that's good.
Yeah, I mean, if you're going to waive, there needs to be a motion to waive the workshop if that's what you're inclined to do. If you're just going to leave it open-ended, then they would need to go to a workshop.
If we discover something crazy, it would be nice to be able to have that option, but we could communicate with you about that. But I don't anticipate that.
Can we make a motion to waive the workshop, and if they find they need it, they can ask for it? Or is that making it too complex?
Just waiving a requirement doesn't mean they could still
Right, they're
request
still
it on the
welcome to
agenda.
That's true.
schedule themselves to a workshop meeting if it turns out to be necessary.
That's fine, as long as we have enough notice to put it on an agenda. That's fine.
All right. Is there a motion to waive the requirement for a workshop meeting?
I will make a motion to waive the requirement for a workshop on, I got to get the right one,
Custom Commerce Park, right there by your thumb.
2310-PUD-10.
We have a motion to waive the workshop requirement by Dr. Kelleher. Did I hear a second from Dave Schmitz? Staff will call the roll.
Ms. Keller? Mr. Maui?
Yes.
Mr. Schmitz?
Yes.
Ms. Bolger?
Yes,
Ms. Berkman?
yes,
And Mr. Jorge?
Yes.
Motion passes.
Okay. Moving on. Next public hearing is Town Run PUD, petition 2310-PUD-11. Reminder, once again, any virtual attendees, please email planners@westfield.in.gov if you have comments you would like to make but are not present to do so. Staff can provide an intro.
Yes. So Lauren is out of the office today, so I'll be filling in for the introduction here. So good evening, members of the commission. For the record, Weston Rogers with the Community Development Department. The item before you this evening is the public hearing for the Town Road PUD covering approximately 35 acres northwest of the intersection at 146th Street and Town Road. As presented, Town Run will feature residential and neighborhood commercial uses, townhomes and single-family detached homes extending from EPCON's existing courtyards of Westfield development. The development will also be anchored by a proposed Lifetime Health Club. A neighborhood meeting was held on September 20th, which generated a productive discussion. As a general recap from the previous workshop meeting, Plan Commission members discussed the topics of internal connectivity within the development, large expanses of parking, the arrangement of proposed retail buildings along 146th Street and Town Road, activating commercial retail building frontages, creating the gateway and village feel throughout the development, the overall visual right-of-way treatment along Town Road, and also evidence of an agreement with the neighboring property. Again, that was just a brief recap of the discussion from the previous workshop. To wrap up the introduction, this item has been properly noticed and advertised. Matt Skelton of Church, Hiddle, and Antrim is here this evening to speak on the project. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, members of the commission. For the record, Matt Skelton with Church, Hiddle, and Antrim, with offices at 116 North Union Street. With me this evening on the development team, Adam Hill with Lower Commercial Development. Also near the back of the room, Dale Pfeiffer with Epcon Communities, and also Scott Ferguson, who's in town for Lifetime. This item was introduced earlier in September. We had a workshop meeting on the 18th. During that time, I think Weston's summary of the items discussed at the workshop meeting is pretty accurate, and then in our materials that we submitted, we agreed to provide you with an update, and I can do that. The agreement we have with the Millers, I've been in contact with Dr. Miller and Dr. Miller on a pretty regular basis. Last time was earlier today, and they understand that once we reach a finalize the concept plan, that's going to be attached to the agreement that we have with them. So that's kind of what we're waiting on. We know what they want, and we just need to make sure that we're trying to make sure that the concept plans ends up organized in a way that addresses their concerns. And a lot of that had to do with parking lot orientation. So the concept plan, so that will be forthcoming. The concept plan itself really addresses most of the things that were discussed at the workshop meeting. It is not finalized yet. We've been through like 5 iterations since the workshop meeting. And when you're working with a development team, the Plan Commission is one of about 5 entities that all has to be on board with these changes. And so we are working with all of them. Everybody has different priorities and preferences, and so we're just not there yet. But we have the Gateway Village feel concept, activating the commercial frontages, addressing or minimizing the large expanse, the appearance of the large expanses of parking, moving buildings around on the property to create that more villagey feel, increasing internal connectivity, which was really probably the biggest discussion point at our neighbor meeting. The neighbors actually, of the neighbor meetings I've attended in my career, this is probably about the warmest reception that I've observed. And so there were many folks, I think one of them, it was actually a member of a Lifetime someplace before. And they're excited about having this use near them. But the internal connectivity issue was very, very important to them, not only within the development, but connecting to the courtyard project to the north. And so anyway, with that, and the last one, we were asked to prepare an exhibit that clearly illustrates the landscaping treatment between the Epcon's attached homes. You might put up the concept plan. And this plan will change, of course. Oh, this is just the red line. Do you have the concept plan by? That's okay. Well, you folks have seen it, I think. But the area between the townhomes and town road will have somewhere close to 100-foot setback from the right-of-way. And so we have had our landscape architect prepare exhibits that actually show what that's going to look like from an elevation perspective and also from an overhead perspective. And we'll be able to provide that to you in advance of your workshop meeting as well. It's not quite ready to hit send yet, but it's essentially done. But those were the 3 big pieces that were identified at the Plan Commission workshop. As Weston mentioned, we had our neighbor meeting on the 20th. We had 4 attendees that weren't part of the development team. One lived in Carmel, south of 146th Street, and the others were all existing EPCON residents. And like I said, we've been in routine and regular contact with the Miller family to the west. Thanks for your consideration, and we're happy to respond to any questions that you may have, either now or after the public hearing.
Okay, thank you. We will go ahead and open a public hearing at 8:15 PM. Has anybody signed up to speak?
No one has signed up.
Is anybody?
May I add, can I speak at my own public hearing? I forgot to mention, we've been in contact with the neighbor, the owner to the east of us, and they've requested that we work together to try to come up with a good scenario for entrance locations. So we have communicated with them, and we intend to do that.
That was the one piece of correspondence that we had received. All right. Nobody has signed up. If there's anybody in the room, having heard what you've heard, that now wants to speak, now is your time. A quick reminder, there's been plenty of opportunity for anybody to email, but I'll give one more of them here. If there is a virtual attendee that is interested in commenting on the town-run PUD, quickly send an email to planners@westfield.in.gov indicating that you have comments, and we will hold for them. But if not, I will close the public hearing in a minute. Is your inbox quiet?
Yeah, no emails.
Okay, I'll close the public hearing at 8:17. And if anybody is out there virtually still listening and planning on commenting on the Wheeler Landing PUD amendments, there are 2 of them. Please write quickly so we don't have to continue to have these downtimes. Okay, staff, or not staff, commissioners, questions for the petitioner or staff?
I have a couple of comments. I listened, I didn't make it to the first workshop, but I did listen to it, and I think a lot of the comments were right on track, especially the connectivity, so that these people can get to the fitness center and the retail and the restaurants and never have to go out on the street, either walking, bicycling, or on their golf cart, however they choose to get there. That would make this sense of community great. I also heard the comments about the garage doors facing Town Road. And I have a concern about that. There are 2 ways to address it, either change the design or hide them. I don't know which is better, but I'll leave that up to the petitioner. There is a significant space there. And as you come down from the north, you come to Pulte's Del Webb development with a large berm and landscaping, and then you get to EPCON's, which is a smaller berm and a little less landscaping. I wouldn't expect this to be any less. So just to give you an idea, you know, what I'm looking for. Can't speak for anybody else. Because I think Town Road, as you go, and on the other side of Town Road, there are residential developments to the north of the church, and there's a fairly significant buffer, you know, landscaping, attractive appearance along there. In fact, I think a lot of those houses actually are on frontage roads and face. So I think the whole appearance along here needs to be, you know, very attractive. And when I looked at the Town West PUD, which was approved back years ago, one of the things they noted on that one is their parking is all internal for their grocery stores and they're commercial, so you don't see a lot of it from the road. And I know that was a point that was brought up at the workshop also, that we don't look at all this parking, and I'm sure there are ways to address that. I understand the reason that you gave for putting the parking on the other side of the building, and I think that had to do with the Millers not wanting to see a parking lot. But there are other ways to address that, again, either screen it or break it up or something. I don't think there were any architectural asks for changing on this, were there?
No, but in all fairness, we hadn't finished, looking at the building. And I think if at the next workshop meeting, we can probably illuminate things a little bit for you, because if you see their typical elevations, there are architectural elements that are, they're just as good, they just don't comply with.
They're just different.
Yeah.
Right. I get it. I get it.
Yeah.
Yeah, because as you go south, then you have the town road as it goes south is mostly residential and very attractive. And of course, just to the south of 146th Street is the Pulte Ranch Homes,
Yep.
which is also well buffered. So I think this has a standard to live up to with the things around it. Thanks.
Cindy?
We were talking so much about signage earlier, and I just wanted to bring that up here. They're asking for basically be 2 non-residential center monument signs.
Which are not 25 feet tall. Those are, it's the normal size pylon signs for a shopping center, like the smaller ones.
But you're not specifying that,
No,
right?
that's what that text means, that.
All right.
We wouldn't qualify for the 25-foot.
And those, though, will be internally lit, and it's just the wall signs will be externally lit?
So, and here's what I'd suggest. I'm not trying to evade your questions by any means, but depending on where these sub-areas end up, it may change the whole sign theme. Not the theme, but the sign orientation, sign arrangement. So that might be best to discuss it in more depth after we have gotten closer to a finalized concept plan. Because I also think that EPCON will be able to state exactly where they want to put their signs. They're already pretty far along in the process as far as what the signs are. They already have examples of these signs that we should be able to show you as well.
And my primary concern would be an internally lit,
Sure.
Kind of sign that's interfering with the residents. So that's my primary concern with those.
Got it.
We've seen situations around town, at least I have, where they are freakishly bright.
Yeah, and
in areas where it does impact residents, so I don't want to see that happen either.
I'm sure we can address that.
Okay, thanks.
The daycare across from Centennial comes quickly to mind,
Yes.
where
Yes,
we
it
spent
does.
way too long talking about a sign.
Yes.
Anything else?
No.
No. David?
I have one other question.
Uh-huh.
At the workshop the last time, you're adding 30-some more houses, and I know they're going to be part of the EPCON community, the townhomes or whatever we're calling them in that kind of a
Area
lime
3.
green, is going to have its own recreation center or open area or whatever. It's not going to be connected.
Correct.
But the EPCON people did say they wanted more amenities or larger,
Yes.
so I guess I would kind of like to hear.
We're doing that.
Right.
We're just, depending on how this
Right.
concept plan changes, is going to depend where we put it and what we can
Right,
put,
okay.
but
I didn't
yes.
want to forget that.
No, we're doing that. We're doing that. And just to be clear, the number of homes from the last version that you saw and the smaller real estate, I think is going from like 35 homes from 50 homes to 35 homes. So it's actually really a reduction.
Kristen or Andre?
The only other thing that I think we mentioned last time was maybe exploring some different architecture on the townhomes. EPCON said they might have some other options for that. So that would be great if that's doable, if we can see that at the workshop, Matt.
Let me see what we can do.
Thank you.
Nothing? Okay. Something further, Jenny? No. Okay. A lot of changes are presumably going to be revealed at the workshop meeting.
Well, they're already well underway. It's just we're not there yet. And
It's not ready for us.
not everybody's blessed it yet, so.
Okay. Well, obviously, I think we're all, myself included, interested in how the internal connectivity can come together. The appearance of whatever the product in Area 3 is that faces Town Road to the east. Just seems like those garage doors were going to be a very difficult thing to do. Comment was made about how there might be some aversion to three-story townhomes. Some of us do have a problem with that. This particular commissioner does not. I think the townhomes that ended up on the last plan that you're not proceeding with actually were worked out to be a fairly attractive option, so.
You like the three-story?
I thought the townhomes that were in that general area on the previous plan fit a good need.
These are two-story attached homes that actually are on a frontage place that face Town Road.
But as we discussed all of this in the workshop meeting and looked at the illustrations, the building that was that long, there were only very little sections where there was egress into the residence, and the rest was 16-foot garage doors, a whole bunch of them that were just going to be difficult to turn into something attractive looking, regardless of the distance. We've talked about mounting and the landscaping. It just seemed like we were not ending up with something that was really going to, kind of Ginny's point, follow the level of the landscaping from the north to the south. And I would prefer to see attractive, no garage door things, even if they're 3 stories, because a lot of people like to buy those, so they're a good sales option for you, I'm sure. And I don't have a problem with them if that better fits the elevation that we're going to see from Town Road as far as not having a lot of 16-foot garage doors staring us in the face.
Well, we have done as the Plan Commission asked, and we're going to show you what it looks like, and then if you still feel that way, then we'll figure out what to do.
Yeah. Okay. Till whenever that workshop meeting comes
All right,
along.
well, it's our intention to file this information by the end of the week.
All right, so we'll see you in
That's
2
the plan.
weeks is
Yep.
your goal.
Yep,
Looking forward to it.
thank you.
Moving on then, we have the first of 2 Wheeler Landing PUD amendments. Amendment 9, 2310-PUD 12, from the YMCA. We can have staff's summary.
Thank you, President, members of the commission. For the record, Caleb Ernest with the Community Development Department. This request is an amendment to the Wheeler Landing PUD district for 1.46 acres. Property is located generally at the southwest corner of 181st Street and Wheeler Road. The adjacent properties to the west and south are also zoned the Wheeler Landing PUD. The adjacent property to the north is zoned the Grand Park Village PUD, and adjacent property to the east is zoned the 181st Street PUD. The petitioner is requesting an amendment to the Wheeler Landing PUD district to modify the architectural standards of the PUD. The north, south, and west elevations of the proposed building currently meet the architectural standards of the Wheeler Landing PUD and the city's UDO. However, a portion of the east elevation does not comply with the required architectural standards, which is why the petitioner is bringing forth this amendment. This item is up for a public hearing tonight, has been properly noticed and advertised, and staff has received no public comments. Representatives of the petition are here, and they plan to make a brief presentation and answer any questions. I am also available if you have any questions for staff. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, good evening, Mr. President, members of the commission. Pete Cleveland, Special Counsel for the YMCA of Greater Indianapolis. My YMCA address is 6610 North Shadeland Avenue, Indianapolis 46220. As I was able to report to the City Council last month, the YMCA is very pleased to inform you that after years of community engagement and fundraising, we hope to start construction of the YMCA next month. And that would be the Ascension St. Vincent Westfield YMCA. As many of you know, the original plan as conceived and designed called for a conjoined facility to be built at one time, and this was back in prior to 2018. Fundraising difficulties forced the Y to defer its portion of the construction except for its share of the site work and the parking lots, and the Y contributed $3.5 million to get the infrastructure and the parking lots built in conjunction with the natatorium. So it's a stunning natatorium, and the idea is, and it's managed today by the YMCA and will be managed in the future for the Westfield, Washington schools by the YMCA. And then the conjoined facility, of course, allows the interaction of users with the two facilities. And what we are here to address to you tonight is the particular design of the YMCA facility. Now, the renderings I'm going to show you are renderings of the particular architectural plans that Tom Cheeseman of CSO Architects will detail specifically for you in just a minute. This, of course, is the south view, and again, the conjoined portion of the building. The lobby area here that exists today will be then the central entrance and lobby for both facilities. And the curtain wall will be punched through, and the common wall already exists. Moving to more the southeast, you see some of the spaces here. And we'll go over the floor plan again, just to inform you, it's not really an issue today, but I believe everyone's interested. The YMCA and Westfield Washington Schools are working on an initiative for higher education, and this would be post-secondary professional and technical training, and they're working with numerous colleges, universities, and community colleges in Indiana and trying to settle the final team and program. And in conjunction with that, there will be classrooms located on the first floor, and then as you see on the second floor, facing to the south. Further to the east, this would be the wellness area for the YMCA, so the treadmills, ellipticals, weights in that area. The child watch and some of the program spaces would be down on this lower level. And again, a view of the vacant Lot 2. And these buildings will have a common wall, and the lot line as platted runs right down that area. So again, this is the wellness area at this point. Child watch, classrooms, YMCA offices in this area, and then you begin the larger expanse of the gymnasium with the elevated track that will be looking down on the gymnasium space. As Mr. Cheeseman will address to you some of the concerns that we are here before you tonight to address, the underlying PUD ordinance requires articulation in both roof line and the facade. And then, of course, also on the materials, and we have what I think you will find to be very minimal nonconformities to the underlying PUD ordinance with materials, metal, and the articulation of the facade and the roof line. This is the proposed ordinance, and included in the ordinance are plans, of course, the plat. And these are the architectural plans that Mr. Cheeseman will address with you in a moment. Just so you're familiar with the interior. Thank you. Appreciate it. First floor, we see these are the classrooms. We have child watch, and then some youth space. The locker room that will serve the Y, also with entrances into the natatorium area. If you could scroll down just a tad. So this is the existing lobby area that serves the natatorium and the main entrance. The higher ed piece will have an entrance there, and this will be largely open. If you could proceed to the next floor, thank you. So this is the wellness area with the large areas of glass, the gymnasium, or the elevated track looking down on the gymnasium in this area. More classrooms in this area, and then these are program spaces for different training. So that is what we hope to build here beginning again next month, presuming your approval here this evening. And with that, I would ask Mr. Cheeseman to identify himself and review with you some of the particulars. There is a narrative sheet in your materials that explains in narrative form what we are requesting that doesn't conform to your PUD ordinance. Thank you, Don.
Thank you, Pete. Good evening. Tom Cheeseman, architect with CSO Architects, 8831 Keystone Crossing, Indianapolis, 46204. We've been working on this project for some time, and we're excited to present it to you tonight. We've been working with the planning group, and thank you very much for your patience and cooperation. And we've been diligent about applying all of the rules and regulations in regards to the architectural design on the project. There were 3 points where we wanted to ask for an amendment today, and we'll describe those. We'll try to describe those to you tonight. One, as it says, is a building facade modulation. So as it says in the requirements, is that any facade that's 90 feet or greater should have any modulation or in and out of 48 inches or 4 feet. And what we're asking today or tonight for your approval on is the gymnasium wall, which is essentially right here on this facade, right here. We did make modulation. This was actually this was 166 foot facade without modulation, and working with Caleb and his team and group, we added our articulation here at the child watch area and at above where the wellness was, as Pete described. What we're asking for is the amendment to doing this portion right here. Gymnasiums are one big volume of space. Gymnasiums generally don't have a lot of articulation on the exterior of them. Gyms are 84 feet long with at least 6 feet of clearance at the end, so we're beyond that 90 feet already, and we were just asking the amendment to that. So we are currently at 90, I think we are at 90, well, I had that written down, sorry, 96 feet. So we're just over the requirement of the 9 feet. So what we're asking tonight is the exception essentially for doing any modulation of that at 90 feet. Because in and out would require the gym to have bump outs in it unnecessarily, in our opinion. The second request is for roof line modulation. So much like what the photos of the existing natatorium, there wasn't any roof line modulation of the existing facility. We have added modulation here, as you can see from the one wall, looking again on the east elevation. So you look at the large metal panel wall, the wellness wall that articulates, and then we have other articulation on this end of the building, on the north end. But what the ordinance says for the PUD is that any facade 60 feet or greater has to have a modulation of at least 48 inches up or down. So if by doing so, we have a 2-story volume, mostly dictated by the height of the gymnasium. And if we were to add 4 feet more to that, that would make the facade greater and taller than the natatorium, which I think would be detrimental for everything. There's no need to make it 4 feet higher other than compliant to the ordinance. So what we're asking for is no modulation on this east elevation, making this all the same as you can see here. Thirdly is building materials. So the city requires that 60% of, a minimum of 60% masonry materials be used exclusive of windows, and we have complied to that. This is mostly a masonry building. So we have exceeded the 60% as it is in the natatorium. The natatorium is a precast structure with a thin brick facade, and we are doing a full depth brick, so we don't have precast in this particular design. And so we've met the 60%. Further, it says that no facade, no building more than can have more, no facade can have no more than 25% of metal. Did I say that correctly? I'll make sure that's right. So we are over that. We're at 32% on the east elevation of the building. And partly is because we want this element at the end to be really the signature piece that you saw in the renderings showing the Y logo. That metal material is already on the natatorium, so we're just using the same materials that are on the natatorium, and we're just using them again here. And we think by adding that metal really helps to break up a lot of the different planes that we have in this building design and adds some further interest. You can see that metal panel is currently right there at the main entrance, and we're just using that same metal here on the corner. So those are the three items we're asking for amendment, and all the other requests and requirements by the city have been met and have been incorporated into the design. So that's what I have this evening.
Thank you.
Well, thank you, Tom. So all in all, we believe, as you saw in the renderings, we have a nicely designed structure with some very clean lines. We have addressed, to the extent we believe we can, the articulation needs under your PUD ordinance, but we would be requesting your approval of those modifications. And then, as I understand your procedure, we would need to request waiver of the workshop and request for recommendation or approval to the city council next Monday night.
Yes.
And be glad to address any questions you have.
Okay, thank you. As you indicated, and as everybody here should have noted on the agenda, it does indicate that we, in the absence of some surprise comments that give us pause to consider something further, that this is ready to go from a technical perspective, and that we could consider, as we've already done tonight, waiving the requirement for a workshop meeting and going ahead and making a recommendation to council tonight.
We haven't had a public hearing yet.
I know.
Okay, gotcha.
I'm going to get
I
to that.
didn't want anybody to-
I just was prefacing all of this for thought while we then
Gotcha.
get to that
I just
point.
wanted to make sure we didn't.
Nope, I
jump
wasn't
too
going to skip
ahead.
by that.
Okay.
I could, so it's, helpful to have that reminder, but she might remind me. Although she missed one of them earlier. But yeah, that's all I just wanted to clarify before we moved on, because I actually kind of meant to say that before we started. That being the case, now it is 8:45, and I've opened the public hearing. Is there anybody that has signed up to speak? No.
Yeah, we don't have anybody signed up.
Okay, and is there anybody here that has had a thought now that they would like to share? Nope. I've made enough reminders, I think, for anybody that potentially could be attending virtually, that there's really no reason to loiter. So I'm gonna go ahead.
Yeah, we don't have any emails at this time.
No, okay. I will go ahead and close the public hearing at 8:45 and a half, since it has not clicked over to 8:46 yet. All right. Questions, comments from commissioners for staff or the petitioner?
I'll start with a comment. So while we obviously have the architectural standards to set the minimum bar, I would never want those standards to impede good design, and I'm happy to support an amendment when it allows that good design, which I believe is the case here. So I think this is very logical. It makes perfect sense, and I appreciate that where you could follow those standards, you have, and the places where you're asking for an amendment, it completely makes sense. Having said that, I have one question, not related to what you're asking. Is your face brick going to match the existing thin veneer on the tilt-up, or is it going to be contrasting enough so that somebody like myself doesn't drive by here every time and have a pet peeve where it doesn't match quite close enough?
Thanks, Andre. Yes, the intent is for the brick to match. Some technicality here is that the thin brick that's on the current natatorium is no longer made. So we have found a brick that is really close. There's a mock-up out there if you happen to drive by on Wheeler Road, you'll see a little brick panel. So we do have a brick that really closely matches. It's made from the same manufacturer. So we actually have two colors of brick. We have a darker brick on the base course, just like the natatorium, and we have a brown brick on the top, which is going to be a stack bond. We have a running bond as it is on the existing building, and a stack bond on the top. So yes, the brick will match.
Okay. Any other questions from my right?
No, I agree with Andre. I think it's great when we have a reason not to follow the rules that makes sense.
Kristen? You're good? David? Cindy? Looks like a nice building, and as others have suggested, these are all pretty good reasons to not hold to the letter of whatever it is that we wrote, which didn't envision the building quite like this. So, waiving a requirement for a workshop would be next up on our list of things to do. Is there a motion to do that?
Make a motion to waive the workshop requirement for 2310-PUD-12.
I'll second that.
Okay. Motion from Jenny Kelleher, seconded by Andre Maui to waive the workshop. Staff will please call the roll.
Mr. Schmitz?
Yes.
Ms. Boljaric?
Yes.
Ms. Berkman?
Yes,
Mr. Horke?
Yes?
Ms. Keller?
Yes,
And Mr. Maui?
Yes.
Motion passes.
Okay. Having waived the requirement for the workshop meeting, we are now ready for a recommendation to City Council.
I'll make a motion to send a favorable recommendation to the city council for 2310-PUD-12, the Wheeler Landing PUD Amendment 9.
Thank you. And a motion from Andre Maui, seconded by Kristen Berkman for a favorable recommendation to council. Staff will please call the roll for this.
Mr. Schmitz?
Yes.
Ms. Boljaric?
Yes.
Ms. Berkman?
yes,
Mr. Horke?
Yes.
Ms. Kelleher?
yes.
And Mr. Maui?
Yes.
Motion passes.
Well, thank you very much. We'll look forward to getting this thing built and begin serving the community.
we will look forward to you getting it built as well. Thanks for,
Thank you.
all right. Last public hearing tonight is another Wheeler Landing PUD Amendment 8, 2310-PUD-13. If we could have staff's summary.
Thank you, President. Members of the commission. For the record, Caleb Ernest with the Community Development Department. This request is an amendment to the Wheeler Landing PUD district for about 20 acres. The property is located generally at the southeast corner of 181st Street and Dartown Road. The adjacent properties to the west, north, and east are also zoned the Wheeler Landing PUD. The adjacent properties to the south are zoned the EI Enclosed Industrial District. The petitioner is requesting an amendment to the Wheeler Landing PUD district to modify Area 4 and the development standards of the Wheeler Landing PUD. The proposed project includes land uses that are not currently permitted in Area 4, and additionally, the petitioner is requesting architectural modifications on the proposed buildings for this petition. For these reasons, the petitioner is requesting this amendment. This item is up for a public hearing tonight, has been properly noticed and advertised, and staff has received no comments. A virtual neighborhood meeting was held on September 26th. Russell Brown, representing the project, is here, and other representatives as well are here to make a brief presentation and answer any questions. And I am available should you have any questions for staff. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. For the record, Russell Brown with the Clark Quinn Law Firm, 320 North Meridian Street, Suite 1100 in Indianapolis. Also with me tonight is Troy Birch and Nathan Banker from Leo Brown Group, and we're all available at the conclusion tonight to answer questions. I will forego the introduction of Leo Brown, given that this Plan Commission heard in February, I believe, from them on a different site within the Wheeler Landing PUD. But after comments and after some various changes to that project, have moved to a different location within the Wheeler Landing PUD, which we hope will be more amenable to both surrounding property owners, which I think it is, as well as to this commission and to the council. As a brief, how do I just click next? There we go. All right. As just a brief description, this is a 20-acre parcel located at the southeast corner of 181st and Dartown. It will be an aging in-place development. You'll have villas in 8 separate 5-unit villa buildings that are a for-rent product, as well as then in the mixed-use or multi-use building, you will have independent living, assisted living, and memory care as well. You will have garage structures, and we'll walk through that on the site plan in just a moment as well. Just as a reminder, these are all owned, operated, and managed by one entity. Despite the fact that there are multiple uses and multiple buildings, it is one entity who is the developer, manager, and maintaining this. So as mentioned in the staff overview, essentially 2 requests in tonight's petition. We are adding 2 uses to Area 4 of the Wheeler Landing PUD. We're adding assisted living facility and multifamily dwelling. Those are the 2 additional uses that would be permitted on this real estate only. We are asking for some adjustments to the architectural requirements, and in doing so, we're trying to focus on things that we heard the last time we were here, focusing on masonry and architectural requirements for those highly visible facades. There are 3 groups of facades, we'll walk through those in just a moment, that we believe are highly visible. We're also trying to clarify compliance with different requirements. If you remember, under the ordinance as written, the multi-use building would have one set of requirements, and the multifamily would have a different set of requirements. We've essentially tried to lump them all together and have one set of requirements for the entirety of the project, instead of having This one's State Road 32, this is multifamily, trying to just be consistent throughout the project. And then also, we're attempting to maintain the expected quality for future residents of this site, as well as for the community at large. We're also trying to recognize that there are enclosed EI uses to the south, and then you have visibility from those 3 rights-of-way that are adjacent. We have set up the architectural standards in the ordinance for the 2 different unit types, but generally they default to the multifamily architectural standards. And we've taken great care, we believe, care to address individual facades through our ordinance provision. Again, just a brief overview. This site moves, would be 200 units in total. The residents on this location, regardless of whether they live in the garden homes or the villas or in the larger building, would have access to all the amenities located in the larger building. So that includes a 3-meal kitchen, that includes activity space. So those individuals who might live in those 5-unit buildings do have access to those amenities. We intend that there will be, in the independent living within the larger building, will have full-size kitchens and have in-unit laundry ability, but also will have access to that 3-meal kitchen. Just as a reminder, this is an aging-in-place location. It is not a nursing home. So you have independent living, assisted living, and memory care, but it is not a nursing home facility. It is not a subsidized senior apartment. It is market rate, and it is staffed. At full occupancy, you would have approximately 65 employees. Obviously, it's 24-hour staffed, given that it is an assisted living facility and has the memory care component. The largest would be the day shift, the daytime, weekday daytime shift. As Leo Brown, in their experience, you have approximately 10 to 15 visitors each workday. The majority of those come after work and then leave between the work hours and leave between 6 and 7. And you would have 20 to 25 visitors on a weekend, and those are spread out through the entire day. The typical assisted living resident is 85 or older, typically a non-driver, given that they're living in assisted living. That makes sense. While the typical independent living resident is probably 80 and is a limited driver, probably a daytime driver, or someone who may have, by their own choice or choice of others, have limited driving opportunities. The majority of the future residents and their adult children are area residents. So this is, we believe, this fits a move-down option in the market. These are individuals who are renters by choice or maybe by necessity, given some challenges in life, aren't ready to move into something that requires more care than assisted living, but allows them to stay in the community where they live, where their children live, where their grandchildren live. So this is the proposed site plan as we've included. Shows the 4, or essentially 5 different use types. So you have the villas that kind of create on the northern boundary, and then on the eastern boundary as well, create the buffer of this property. You should see the garages. Those are 18 garage spaces that are available for rent for those independent living residents who are not in a villa. The villas have attached garages, so they have 1 car. 4 of the units have 1 car. 1 of the units has a 2-car garage. So those would likely be utilized for individuals living in the independent living in the larger building. You would have the centralized amenity space in the larger building, assisted living on the south, and then the memory care in the purple there. As you can see on this site, something we talked about in our narrative statement, this site has some constraints on it. So you have a regulated drain on the northern boundary. So the area that's not kind of in the highlighted in the green, that is a county regulated drain that has no opportunity for development. It does create what we think is a sizable, at least, setback from 181st Street. Then you obviously have some wetlands that are kind of on the eastern boundary that would be in the area where some of the new retention pond is located as well. So you do have a site that, though it's 20 acres in size, does have some development constraints on it that decrease the developable acreage. Obviously, given that you have retention ponds that would be on the eastern side of the site, you do have visibility from Grand Park Boulevard into this project. And so we've tried to be mindful of that as we've worked through the ordinance. But the most visibility will be in proximity, and then also in length will be along the Dartown Road frontage. Just quickly show the proposed floor plan or conceptual floor plan. And I show this for a couple reasons. One, it shows the internal layout. So for the independent living, you have both one plus, and 2-bedroom layouts. But I show this more to show that we are having some step down in intensity. Independent living would be 3 units. Your assisted living would be 2 levels, 2 floors, and then your memory care would be a single. So you have 3-story in the building, 2-story, and then a single story as you move through the site, versus previous iterations that we've had that were 3-story throughout. We have attempted to give you an idea of the visualization of what this project would look like. I think that's something we heard very loud and clear in previous conversations about this when we're not bringing to you full-blown, full-designed architectural renderings. Give us a concept of how this is going to look at this site. So this is a view from Dartown Road, and you see your 2-story assisted living here. You see your 3-story independent living here, and then you can see back there, you can see kind of the single story of the memory care. This does follow some of the kind of look and feel of similar Leo Brown projects, with a very prominent entry here on Dartown Road, which we think is appropriate, gives you a very centralized entry point, and then shows the internal kind of layout and configuration of the villas located to the east. We think this does meet the expectation of what a high-quality development looks like. We meet an adjusted undulation requirement, having recesses that are more in line with the State Road 32 overlay, but provide that along the Dartown Road exit, or Dartown Road frontage. We do have covered porches and patios that, again, we think provides that undulation, also provides very usable space for the residents. And this is a view which would essentially be from the 181st and Grand Park intersection. Closer than that, but kind of from that view. Again, on the rear elevations of the villa, so the single story, a couple things to point out is that we have included roof plane changes to try to make sure that there is some architectural change and intrigue on the rear elevations. These units also show covered patios. Those could be screened in to provide, again, kind of a 4-season, almost 4-season space, but provide for that outdoor space for residents. One of the modifications we made in the proposed masonry requirements deals with whether or not this gets counted in the masonry requirement. And our view of that was, we think it'd be more important to push masonry out to facades that are more visible versus something that's a covered porch. We put in a minimum square footage, so it can't be a 5-foot or 10-square foot covered porch, so that there is expectation that there's going to be significant change in that facade. So that is something that we included in there. Again, trying to push the masonry requirements out to the facade that is visible and more visible versus putting it in some place that no one except the resident would ever see. just show kind of representative examples of some other Leo Brown developments. So this has a very similar kind of entry feature that we would anticipate might be part of the Dartown Road entry with that kind of portico, covered entry space, we think is very prominent. This is a two-story development versus three-story, but you can see some of the undulation in the long facades. The picture in the upper right-hand corner shows kind of the internal, some of the internal courtyard space that only residents would have access or see. This is an example of the villa design. So just wanted to show you kind of both the streetscape as well as an individual unit. You'll notice that in addition to the rear covered porch, they also have a front porch. I live in a neighborhood that has everyone has a front porch. Very small lot lines. And my favorite thing is to walk down the street and you see people utilizing their front porch, and it creates a sense of community. And I think that's what we're trying to do in this location as well, as create that sense of community. And again, each of these units would have at least a one-car attached garage. Some of them would have two. And again, just another example of architectural styles, why we provided the upper pictures, showing again roof changes, undulation in facades, and how that could appear. We included the lower picture to show some of what the courtyard, the programming space of the courtyard might look like using hardscape and landscaping. That would be outdoor activity space for residents, but probably would be internal courtyard space. But again, it's not grass, it's not a patio, it's something that's designed to be activated and aesthetically pleasing. I included this because I think it shows the quality and the elevated desire of Leo Brown for their residents and for the visitors to their residents. The top shows kind of the activity space, and the lower pictures show what would be an entrance and dining space. So I think it looks like someplace you'd look at when you walk into a country club kind of feel or a smaller hotel feel. I think that that's the interior quality that Leo Brown provides and their residents, frankly, expect, given what they've chosen to live in this portion of their lives. So with that, we believe we've attempted to try to listen to the concerns raised on that different site. I don't know that we're 100% there yet. I think you'll tell us whether we're there or not, but I think we've attempted to work through and try to create a design that pays attention to those things, especially off-site views, how it lays out for surrounding properties, and then what residents might expect. So with that, myself or other members of the team are available. We've not received any public comments or any feedback since the notices went out, but happy to listen to any questions or comments that you have.
Okay, thank you. It is 9:08. Open a public hearing on this item. Has anybody indicated an interest in commenting?
Yeah, we have no one signed up.
Any of the couple of uninvolved parties that are still here have any interest in making a comment? Hearing none, and I assume the email box has no comments?
No emails.
All right. I'll close the public hearing at 9:08 and a half. All of our public hearings were public quiets. So, commissioners, questions or comments for the petitioner or staff?
I'll jump in. A couple of questions and big comments, and then some smaller ones. In the Wheeler Landing PUD, there was a limit set on the acreage and the number of dwelling units that could be built in it. This is being requested on a piece of land that was not to be for that use. So I hope that the Wheeler Landing PUD people understand that there may be another use in the future that says it's residential and dwelling units, and it may already be capped. And we talked about this with staff the other day to make sure. And I think that was, I wasn't involved in this. I came on the Plan Commission just as it was being voted on. But I understand that the council and the Plan Commission at that time did want to make sure there was a limit on the number of dwelling units because this was supposed to be an employment area. So that doesn't affect you, but I want to make sure that the PUD overall owners understand that this is going to take away from that.
The sellers are very well aware of that, and have told us that they've quote-unquote allocated the units that are necessary for this site, so they're
Okay.
very well aware of that.
Okay, I just don't want it to come up behind him and have him go, whoa. The second thing is this an appropriate location for this use? It was supposed to be general business. My personal opinion is that it probably is, and only because of the constraints on the site, which I also see as advantages to this development. Can we show the picture of the concept plan? You have a legal drain that goes along there, and you're going to have a second pond required other than the one that exists. And I think my grandmother lived in a retirement home similar to this, and she'd walk out on her back patio and look out at the legal drain or, ducks. And I mean, I think it makes much more sense to have this be a residential type community than a business that would not utilize these, what I think are advantages to this property. That's just me. The requirement for brick, you have added a lot more brick than in the initial presentation, and there is brick on all four sides, be it different proportions, but all four sides, which is a plus for me. My question for staff is, there is a definition here for multi-unit type building. It's not in our UDO. I'm questioning staff whether this is an acceptable term. It might be used in the future by someone else. Do you guys have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, without further clarification from Kevin, personally, as a staff member, I feel comfortable with it mainly because it's being locked to this residential, and it's not a term that's being widely accepted by the entire PUD.
Okay.
So if another project was to come in and use it, we would look at the context of it, not as a precedent setting.
Okay, great. Thank you. The small stuff. You show us some beautiful buildings and roof lines you talked about, and covered patios and 2-story and 3-story buildings. I haven't gone over the Wheeler Landing PUD. Are these things that are required in the Wheeler Landing PUD, or do they need to be written specifically in here if you're presenting that type of thing?
I can speak to a couple of those. So as I tried to be clear about at the beginning, so the Wheeler Landing PUD, as it's drafted, anything that's not a multifamily or enclosed industrial kind of defaults to the State Road 32 overlay. So what we've done on this site is essentially said that the multifamily standards apply to the entirety of the site, though the multi-unit building would not be considered a multifamily building under your ordinance typically. Okay. So we've applied that and then tried to design a building to comply with that standard.
Okay.
The only real exceptions that, other than the masonry requirements that we have provided for, are on the covered patios, on the rears of the villas, allowing those to not be counted in the percentage of the facade that has to be. Otherwise, we've not modified the multifamily standards substantially. We've built in that. This was something we did with staff, was the ordinance talks about undulation per units. And so we just defined that the units in here could count, would be defined as that unit, because not all of them are multifamily units. Some of them are assisted living, some of them are memory care. So we've tried to bring this actual use and give a way that staff can apply the multifamily architectural standards to this building, even though some of the uses aren't multifamily units within the building.
I'm gonna have to look at the Wheeler Landing PUD, because you talked about roof roof changes and covered patios and lots of things, and I wanna make sure those are in there or in something.
Yeah, I believe those are in there in the multifamily, largely in the multifamily
Okay,
zoning standards. And so we've complied with that, or said how we're gonna comply with that, with the particularities of this site.
so, yeah, Caleb, can you gather that for us and say what standards do apply? So what he has presented is indeed what,
Yeah, so the original Wheeler Landing PUD does not modify architectural standards for multifamily necessarily, but it defaults to the city's standards for architecture, whether it's in the architectural section of the UDO or the 32 overlay. The city's standards apply architecturally,
okay,
with exception to what's being proposed
yeah.
in
with
this
the-
ordinance.
The brick and the, yeah.
Correct, yeah.
So it would apply to this whole development. This is all would be under the multifamily architectural standards.
It would, some of it falls under architecture, some of it falls under the 32 overlay, which we would still apply architectural standards to.
I'll
so.
check those out then. Thank you.
Yep, welcome.
I think that's all I have.
I'm going to show my shortcomings on understanding site civil design. I was hoping, without taking us down a deep rabbit hole, is there a 30-second explanation to clue me in? How does the drainage easement between the two retention ponds, how does that topography work? And does that mean there's a time when all of those bodies of water connect, or what does that do?
Nathan Banker, Leo Brown, 86, 802, 886, Indianapolis. So when we spoke with the county surveyor, they identified that the drainage ditch cannot be touched by our property, or we cannot use that as any form of drainage. We would have to provide our own pond that would meet the needs of our site specifically. So that's why we have those green buffers between the new pond, the drainage ditch, and then can't access the existing retention pond. In doing so, we're kind of meeting the needs. We're in the process of revising the floodplain. So as we kind of develop the plan a little more, we'll understand how a 100-year flood or something bigger would all work together. But right now, our site would work independent of the drainage ditch.
Okay. So the drainage ditch, walls, whatever, separate it from either pond?
Yeah.
Kind of goes down, up, cutting a slice across there.
Yeah, and so there is actually a large rock buffer that separates the ditch from the site itself. So it's kind of got its own topography that we are not touching.
I understand what you're up against. I can't even imagine the complexities of this, but I think it's unfortunate because things that make sense independently, when you put them next to each other, to me, that doesn't make sense. It would be a cool feature to let the ditch be an inlet and then have a weir dam to control the outlet or whatever and combine all that. But I guess since you've already checked into it, it's got to be separate. It is what it is. Thanks for the explanation. I was trying to figure that out.
I have one other question that, you have a lot of trees on this site, but this is not your landscaping plan, correct?
No, it's not.
Because when I see this, I think that's really cool. And I guess I don't, if that's not it, I don't want to see it.
Yeah,
Because it leads me down a,
we actually talked about taking it off for that very reason, because we didn't want it to be presented as, and you look at it and say, well, gosh, in your original concept plan, I think we're not there in a site design for many of the reasons that we just talked about, and we could certainly take that off from a concept plan so it's not something that you say, hey, you said this was what it was. But I think the intention is to, as permitted, because in addition, something that Nathan didn't add is the legal drain is a creation of statute, and it has thou shalt not touch kind of language in it.
right.
Or if you do, they can come in and clear cut it, or they can remove it and bill you for that, and the surveyor's office has the right to do that. So what we've tried to do also is, we actually, I think, did a better job on this version, kind of grayed out anything that's not on anything we control. So we didn't show anything, you know, we're mindful not to show something that exists that we don't control, that we can't say is gonna stay there, because we didn't want to do that. Because originally there is some stuff on the original aerial that's off-site that we don't control. So I say all to say, it's representative, it's not a plan, but it is representative of what would be in compliance with your ordinance.
Okay. I will have to go to the landscape ordinance for the Wheeler Landing PUD to see exactly what's required then. Thank you.
Cindy? David? Questions, comments?
No, I think, I like the product in the last presentation, the facility itself, and the petitioner. So given the site constraints, I'd still like it. So I'm fine right now.
You guys have covered my questions already.
Cindy, I have a question for you. Why was this area general business with no residential? Do you recall? Was it more like some just blanket areas?
The entirety of this Grand Park and its economic development area, it was meant to have kind of supporting residential, but not be residential, if you know what I mean. And so that's why those limits came in terms of that. It was limiting it so we wouldn't wind up with a bunch of residential.
Right. I guess this particular area, which is why they would like to put residential here, was kind of GB, not supposed to have residential. And I know I'm putting you on the spot, and this was quite a few years ago. I just didn't know if you recalled why this particular area was an area where those that put that PUD together, maybe Kevin, maybe you recall, why this area didn't have any residential in it at the time. Was there some big thought to that, or just random?
I can take a guess.
Okay.
But I would anticipate it's because of the uses to the south, that this is not where you would want it. Typically, you would not have an infill residential development next to EI uses, but that's kind of developed now. And so I think it makes more sense for a developer to come in and say, hey, we know what that is, and we're comfortable, you know, making a very significant investment at this location with that use to the south. That might be a guess, but I would anticipate that there's some planning principles included in that you're talking about step-down zoning, and GB versus EI is probably more acceptable than a residential use. But you'll notice that we didn't put any of the villas on the south. You know, we're trying to utilize, again, we're doing our own step-down, I think, as you move in here, and trying to you know, take advantage of it, take advantage of some of those natural things, but also recognize what's there to the south. So that's a guess, but I've sat through a few planning commissions, and that would be probably my educated guess about what it was.
And it was the developer that brought it, and I don't know exactly why, you know, individually parcels or whatever were put into what districts. I'd have to go back and look at that, but it was obviously coming from the Wheeler PUD itself. But yeah, having that enclosed industrial to the south, it makes sense that that's why it worked out the way it did. I will say though, and this is just my opinion on the matter, this does not put kids in school. It does provide a fair number of jobs and quite a bit of assessed value. So not that that's really a thing for this body, but the way I look at it in terms of, it's not purely residential, if you will, the way we would normally consider residential. So.
I guess my only other comment on this, which is just a broader statement, not really, because I think what you've done here actually looks lovely. I think the whole development's very thoughtful. But I listened to the council comments, and I know Jake Gilbert had some comments about just overall how many assisted living facilities have we approved lately, and he had kind of asked staff to do some analysis on that and get back with him on that. So that's one thing that I do think would be interesting, just as we move forward with these type of proposals. But the other thing I just wanted to share was I had the opportunity to talk with Chief Gaylor in the spring regarding our fire department and paramedics. And there are a lot of runs that go to assisted living facilities in Westfield right now. And I just want us to be mindful as we move forward with a fire department and paramedics who are pretty taxed right now with their runs. And that we think about that just as we see proposals like that, and maybe check in with him as well to kind of talk about capacity for these types of facilities. To Cindy's point, it doesn't burden the schools, but we are on the other side of it. You know, the morning that I was in with the chief, he said to me, it was 11 a.m., and he's like, we've made our third run to an assisted living facility. And so it's just something I'm commenting on for us to be mindful of as we review these.
This site is in what was originally identified as Area 4, which is the entirety of everything that's west of this still, which includes a lot of really big potentially uses. There's light and medium industry, self-storage, warehouse and distribution, wholesalers, educational institution with dormitory accommodations. I'm not sure how that one got there, but those all are kind of qualified as inside storage only, nothing outside. There's also engineering, research, testing labs, retail, special handling, multi-story parking garage, and an airport that happens to be there already. Is the expectation in the crystal ball, is that still what's going to be on the other side of the street from these future assisted and independent and whatever residents? We're talking transitions here, and I think this is an okay place for it, but I'd be a little bit concerned if the expectation is going to be a 50,000 or 100,000 square foot industrial building right across the street. So hopefully internally, as the Wheelers PUD comes together, that those things are not anticipated right at Dartown Road and go further west if they go there at all.
So just a general comment from staff. Having worked on the original 2018 ordinance, I remember that the discussions on the transitions between the different areas, the discussion that happened was they didn't want to touch any of the buffering landscaping to kind of offer this accommodation to the unknown. So along Dartown Road, external street frontage landscaping would still apply to this proposal. Whatever's on the west of Dartown Road, there would still be external street frontage landscaping. So you'd have essentially two buffers of external street frontage landscaping.
Okay.
So I just wanted to provide that as a sense of some sort of buffer.
Very helpful. Did not recall that level of detail. Thanks for that contribution. Anybody else have questions or thoughts, comments they want to share? Okay, or Jenny has something else.
I know that this has to go to TAC, or has been to TAC, I don't know. And the fire department's there, so hopefully they know about this for their future planning, or at least comments. The other thing is, as I drove up there today, there's a whole lot of residential up there. I mean, if you go east on 181st Street, you get to those big multi-story buildings around the lake and everything. So hopefully our thoroughfare plan has a way to handle all these people. Again, that's not our purview, but there's a lot of people up there.
I can make sure to send this proposal to Public Works and Fire Department just to have them.
Yeah.
So we have at least on the books that they've looked at it.
I know we're hoping to do a roundabout at the intersection, at least on the 181st and Grant Park. Not that that will make all the difference, but it'll help.
Just as I drove up there, I went, oh my gosh, there's a lot of people up here in this small space. Yeah. And hopefully they'll be able to get out and in.
I think that'll all happen. We do get a chance to see and make a recommendation on whatever revision comes to the thoroughfare plan, likely next year, thinking maybe. Okay, you'll be back for a workshop at whatever point in time you're ready. So if you don't have anything else for us, and we don't have anything else for you, appreciate your being here and patiently waiting till the 5th item. Thank you. Oddly, there are no items continued to a future meeting, so we actually have all of our business on our agenda here right now. We are now to reports and comments. Is there anything in general from Plan Commission members for other Plan Commission members? Kristen?
I just wanted to thank Victor for his 3+ years of service here on the APC. So good luck on your next endeavor. Strange to see you out there and not here, but good luck with everything, and just want to say thank you for all you've done up here.
You can always come back and start all our computers for the meeting if you want. You did this? We didn't know who did it.
We have to say thank you for that as well.
I thought maybe you'd sign up and speak at a public hearing. You disappointed me. All right, council liaison.
We did not have a meeting. We will be having a meeting, though, on Monday, and you can expect a lot of stuff, like I think our public hearing on our budget and all that goodness.
Awesome. I honestly don't recall. Was there a BZA meeting? I don't
It will
think.
be Tuesday, next Tuesday.
Same thing. You'll be shocked to know that there was no plat committee meeting either. And the October ones are already canceled. So there's no report from the plat committee liaison. Community Development Department, any words of wisdom for us? Since this is now completing our first meeting of October, and we have a workshop, and we have a November and a December first meeting presumably, and maybe workshops in both of those months, do we pester the mayor to replace Victor, or do we operate with 8?
Yeah, we can ask. I do think we are anticipating at least a consent item for workshop in 2 weeks. But are there any PUD projects coming? I don't know. Well, maybe the
Matt was
town
expecting
run.
to be back.
Yeah, town run may be back, so.
So
okay,
we'll have a meeting.
We'll at least have probably those 2 items on the 16th, whatever that is. Yeah, 16th. So, yeah.
Is the mayor healthy and back in service again?
Yes, he has been released. He's not, I don't believe he's back to work.
Working
yet, but
remotely.
He's home.
Okay, so we need to determine if there's somebody that might be available that can jump in quickly. But we can probably survive with 8 of us till the end of the year and seat the new APC, whomever that may encompass, and go with a full slate beginning in January.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's safe to say we'll definitely have first meeting in November and probably first meeting in December. I think the workshop meetings in November and December are questionable at this point, but, so we'll have at least, 3 more meetings?
Yeah.
At a
We don't
minimum,
come
maybe
up with,
5.
if there wasn't a fill-in that already has experience, I'm not sure there's enough time for them to really figure out what's going on, because we can be a little confusing at times. Maybe. Or what comes in front of us could be. Anyway, all right, we'll figure that one out. Obviously not gonna be solved tonight. So we're now ready for a motion to adjourn. If we're all ready to adjourn, is there such motion?
Motion to adjourn.
Motion from Cindy Spoljarek to adjourn. Is there a second? Seconded by Dave Schmitz. Everybody can voice vote on this. All in favor of adjourning, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Anybody opposed to adjourning? We are adjourned at 9:33.
No, mayor's in the hospital.
Mayor